In the heart of the flames, with death closing in around him, Caleb Thornton called out a name. Not Rebecca, not his dead wife, Clara. And in that single word spoken in fire and smoke, everything changed. But the man who set that fire was watching, and he was not finished yet. This is the story of how a widowed rancher and a woman running from her past found something worth fighting for. The blood-red sunset spilled across the San Joaquin Valley like a wound that refused to heal. The sky burned in shades of crimson and amber, casting long shadows across the parched California earth. It was the kind of sunset that old-timers said meant trouble was coming, the kind that made horses nervous and dogs whimper beneath porches. Inside the weathered ranch house at Stonebrook, a different kind of storm was brewing. Caleb Thornton stood before the small mirror in his daughter's bedroom, his calloused hands trembling as they held a simple blue ribbon. The fabric was soft between his roughened fingers, delicate as a butterfly wing, and just as impossible to control. He was 33 years old. He had survived the Civil War with a bullet wound in his left shoulder that still ached when the weather turned cold. He had built this house with his own two hands, board by board, nail by nail. He had broken horses that other men swore could never be tamed. He had faced down cattle rustlers and drought and locusts and every manner of hardship the frontier could throw at a man. But for the past 30 minutes, he had been defeated by a 4-year-old girl's tangled hair and a length of blue silk. The man who could tame the wildest stallion in 3 counties stood helpless before a child's ribbon. Behind him, reflected in the dusty glass, his daughter Lily sat on her small bed. Her golden curls, so like her mother's, were a wild mess of tangles and knots. Her blue eyes also, her mother's eyes, were red-rimmed from crying. In her arms, she clutched a rag doll named Rosie, its cloth body worn soft from constant, holding its dress stained with tears and dirt and the accumulated grief of 6 impossible months. 6 months since Rebecca had died. 6 months since the fever had taken her, swift and merciless as a summer storm. 6 months of Caleb trying to be both father and mother to a little girl who needed things he did not know how to give. The room still smelled of lavender. Rebecca had placed sachets in every drawer and closet, little cloth bags filled with dried flowers from her garden. The scent lingered like a ghost, a constant reminder of the woman who should have been here. The woman who had known how to braid hair and soothe nightmares and make everything right with a touch and a word. Caleb looked at the ribbon in his hands. Such a simple thing. Such an impossible thing. Papa, Lily's voice was small and broken. I want Mama. The words struck him like physical blows. He had heard them every day for 6 months and they never hurt any less. I know, sweetheart. He turned from the mirror and knelt beside her bed, his broad shoulders hunching in the dim light of the oil lamp. Papa's here, but Papa doesn't know how to make braids. The tears spilled down her cheeks, leaving tracks through the dust that seemed to accumulate on everything these days. Papa doesn't know how to sing the bedtime song. Papa doesn't know how to make the bad dreams go away. Each word was true. Each word was a knife. Caleb reached out to smooth the tangled hair back from his daughter's forehead. His hands, so capable with horses and tools and weapons, felt clumsy against her delicate skin. He had spent his whole life learning how to be strong, how to be tough, how to survive. No one had taught him how to be gentle. I'm trying, Lily. He heard the crack in his own voice and hated it. Papa's trying his best. Mama would know what to do. Lily pulled Rosie closer, burying her face in the doll's yarn hair. Mama always knew what to do. Caleb closed his eyes against the burning behind them. Cowboys did not cry. That was what his father had taught him back when he was on a hardscrabble ranch in Texas. Cowboys were tough. Cowboys pushed through. Cowboys did not break down no matter how much they wanted to. But his father had never told him what to do when his heart was shattered and his daughter needed something he could not give. Try to sleep, sweetheart. He pulled the quilt up around her small body, the quilt that Rebecca had sewn during her pregnancy, each stitch a prayer for the child growing inside her. Papa will be right here. Lily did not answer. She had already turned away, curling around her doll, shutting him out. The rejection, though unintentional, cut deeper than any knife. Caleb stayed beside her bed as the oil lamp flickered and the shadows grew long. He watched her breathing slowly. Even out, watched the tension leave her small shoulders as sleep finally claimed her. Even in rest, she clutched Rosie as if the doll might disappear, like her mother had disappeared. When he was certain she was asleep, Caleb rose and walked to the window. The sunset had faded to purple dusk, and the first stars were beginning to appear above the distant mountains. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled the sound, lonely and mournful. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass and let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like years. "Rebecca," he whispered into the darkness. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what she needs." The only answer was silence and the distant cry of the coyote and the endless California wind. The morning came too soon, as mornings always did now. Caleb had spent another night in the chair beside Lily's bed, jerking awake each time she whimpered in her sleep. The nightmares had become a nightly occurrence, dreams of fever and darkness and a mother who kept walking away, no matter how loudly Lily called for her. By the time the first gray light crept through the windows, Caleb felt as though he had been trampled by a herd of cattle. Every muscle ached. His eyes were gritty with exhaustion. The scar on his left shoulder throbbed with a dull, persistent pain. He eased himself out of the chair and made his way downstairs, his boots heavy on the wooden steps. The house was quiet except for the settling of old timbers and the scratch of mice in the walls. Quiet in a way it never had been when Rebecca was alive. She had filled every corner of this house with life, with music from the old piano in the parlor, with the smell of fresh bread and apple pie, with laughter and conversation and the thousand small sounds of a home being loved. Now there was only silence. Caleb paused in the kitchen doorway, surveying the chaos that had accumulated over the past weeks. Dirty dishes were stacked haphazardly in the sink. A pile of laundry sat on one chair clean, but unfolded. Dust covered every surface. The stove was cold, the pantry nearly bare. Rebecca would be heartbroken to see her kitchen like this. She had taken such pride in keeping a proper home and making sure everything was clean and orderly and welcoming. She had been raised by a mother who believed that a woman's worth was measured by the state of her household. And though Rebecca had often chafed against that narrow definition, some part of her had internalized it. Caleb had not cleaned in weeks, had not cooked anything more complicated than beans and biscuits, had let everything slide while he struggled just to keep himself and Lily fed and alive. Surviving was not living, he knew that, but surviving was all he had the strength for right now. He was pouring himself a cup of cold coffee from yesterday's pot when the back door opened and Tommy Reeves appeared. At 19, Tommy was more boy than man, with a thin frame and an eager face and a loyalty to Caleb that bordered on worship. He had worked at Stonebrook for 2 years now, and he had been the only ranch hand willing to stay on after Rebecca's death and the subsequent chaos. The others had drifted away, looking for steadier employment with ranchers who were not falling apart at the seams. "Morning, boss." Tommy pulled off his hat, his brown hair standing up in unruly tufts. "I got bad news." Caleb set down his coffee cup. Of course there was bad news. There was always bad news these days. "What is it? 3 of the calves are sick. Looks like they got into some bad water down by the south pasture. And the fence on the east side came down again overnight. Probably got another 20 heads scattered across Crawford's land by now." Crawford. The name sent a spike of anger through Caleb's exhaustion. Nathaniel Crawford owned the neighboring spread, the largest ranch in the valley. He also owned the bank in town and half the businesses along Main Street and the loyalty of more than a few elected officials. Crawford had been trying to buy Stonebrook for years, and Rebecca's death had only intensified his efforts. "I'll deal with the fence after breakfast," Caleb said. "The calves, separate them from the herd and get some medicine into them. You know what to do." Tommy nodded, but he did not leave. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly wanting to say something else. "Spit it out, son. It's Mrs. Perkins, boss." Tommy's voice dropped as if saying it quietly would make it hurt less. "She sent word this morning. Her rheumatism is flaring up bad. She can't come help with Miss Lily anymore." Caleb felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Agnes Perkins was a widow who lived on the small farm adjacent to Stonebrook. She had been helping with Lily since Rebecca's death, coming over each day to watch the child while Caleb worked the ranch. She was the only reason Caleb had been able to keep things running at all. Without her, he would have to choose between his daughter and his livelihood. How long? His voice came out rougher than he intended. "She doesn't know. Could be a few days. Could be longer." Tommy's young face was full of sympathy. "I'm real sorry, boss. I know this puts you in a hard spot." A hard spot. That was one way to describe it. Caleb ran a hand through his unwashed hair. The weight of everything pressed down on him like a physical force. The sick calves, the broken fence, the absent Mrs. Perkins, the daughter upstairs, who needed more than he knew how to give. Papa. He turned to find Lily standing in the kitchen doorway. Her nightgown was wrinkled, her feet bare, her golden hair still a tangled mess from yesterday. She rubbed her eyes with one fist while the other hand clutched Rosie. You left. Her voice was small and accusatory. You promised to show me the new foal this morning, but you left before I woke up. The guilt hit him like a blow to the chest. He had promised. He had completely forgotten. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I had to check on some things. You always have to check on things. Lily's lower lip trembled. The cows always need something. The horses always need something. The fences always need something. You never have time for me anymore. That's not fair, Lily. But even as he said it, he knew she was right. Since Rebecca's death, he had been so consumed with just keeping the ranch afloat that Lily had been pushed to the margins. Fed and sheltered and kept safe, yes, but not truly cared for, not in the way she needed. Mama would have had time for me. The words hung in the air between them, sharp-edged and devastating. Caleb felt something crack inside his chest. A wall he had been holding in place through sheer force of will. Go to your room. The words came out harsh, harsher than he intended. I need to finish the north fence before sundown. Lily's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked as though she might argue, might scream, might throw herself on the floor in a tantrum. But instead, she just turned and walked away. Her small shoulders slumped in defeat, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Caleb watched her go and wondered how much more they could both take before they broke completely. The ride into town was a special kind of torture. Caleb had spent 2 hours that morning trying to make Lily presentable. He had attempted to brush her hair, succeeding only in making her cry as the brush caught in the tangles. He had tried to find a clean dress, eventually settling on one that was wrinkled, but free of obvious stains. He had scrubbed her face and hands with a washcloth, trying to remove the dirt that seemed to accumulate on children, no matter how little they did. The results sat before him now on the saddle, a small girl with wild hair and a rumpled dress and red-rimmed eyes. She looked like exactly what she was. A motherless child being raised by a father who was in over his head. Millfield spread out before them as they crested the final hill. It was a small town, barely more than a cluster of wooden buildings strung along a dusty main street. The general store sat at one end, the saloon at the other, with a church and a schoolhouse and a handful of homes filling in between. 5 years ago, when Caleb and Rebecca had first arrived, Millfield had been little more than a waypoint for travelers heading west. Now it was a proper frontier town with all the benefits and complications that entailed. As they rode down Main Street, Caleb felt the eyes on them. The pitying glances from the women, the awkward nods from the men, the whispered comments that were not quite quiet enough. Poor little thing, someone murmured. Looks like a ragamuffin. That man has no idea what he's doing. Rebecca must be turning in her grave. Caleb kept his eyes forward and his jaw clenched. He had endured worse in the war. He could endure this. Lily pressed closer to him, sensing the attention shrinking from it. He wrapped one arm around her protectively, wishing he could shield her from all of this, from the gossip and the judgment and the endless reminders that they were failing without Rebecca. The schoolhouse was a small building adjacent to the church, a single room where Ruth Hoffman taught lessons to the dozen or so children in the area. Caleb deposited Lily at the door, ignoring Mrs. Hoffman's pursed lips as she took in his daughter's disheveled appearance. We'll discuss proper grooming standards later, Mr. Thornton. The school teacher's voice dripped with disapproval. I'm sure we will. Caleb tipped his hat and turned away before he said something he would regret. The general store was his next stop. Samuel Barrett's establishment was the heart of Millfield's commerce, a crowded space filled with everything from flour and sugar to fabric and farm equipment. The smell of coffee and tobacco and leather greeted Caleb as he pushed through the door. Morning, Caleb. Samuel Barrett was a solid man in his 50s, with a gray beard and kind eyes and a reputation for fair dealing. He had been one of the first to offer condolences after Rebecca's death, and one of the few who had not followed it up with unsolicited advice. Samuel. Caleb approached the counter. I need the usual, and some hair ribbons if you have them. Ribbons? Samuel's eyebrows rose slightly, but he made no comment. He reached beneath the counter and produced a small selection. Blue ones, perhaps, they would suit the little one's eyes. Caleb nodded, not trusting his voice. Something about the simple kindness of the gesture, the acknowledgement that he was trying, made his throat tight. He was counting out coins when the bell above the door chimed. Caleb glanced up and the world shifted beneath his feet. The woman who entered was unlike anyone he had seen in Millfield before. She wore a traveling dress of deep blue, simple but well-made, the kind of garment that spoke of Eastern refinement. Her hair was chestnut brown, pinned neatly beneath a modest bonnet. She was perhaps 25, with features that were more striking than conventionally pretty. A strong chin, a straight nose, eyes the color of warm honey. But what caught Caleb's attention was not her appearance. It was the way she carried herself, straight-backed and steady-gazed, without the downcast eyes and demure posture that most women adopted in the presence of strange men. She looked at him directly, assessed him openly, and seemed to find him neither threatening nor particularly interesting. "Uncle Samuel." Her voice carried a trace of Eastern accent, Philadelphia perhaps, or somewhere nearby. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Samuel's face broke into a wide smile. "Clara, you made it. Come in, come in." He hurried around the counter to embrace her. "Caleb, this is my niece, Clara Bennett. She's just arrived from Philadelphia yesterday." Clara extended her hand in a gesture more commonly seen between men than between a man and a woman. "Mr. Thornton, a pleasure to meet you." Caleb shook her hand automatically, noting the firmness of her grip. She did not flinch away from his calloused palm or wipe her hand on her dress afterward. "Likewise, Miss Bennett." Samuel was practically bouncing on his heels with enthusiasm. Clara was a teacher back east, one of the finest ladies' academies in Philadelphia. She's come west looking for new opportunities. Something flickered in Clara's eyes at the word opportunities. A shadow that was there and gone so quickly, Caleb might have imagined it. "The West offers many things the East cannot." Her voice was carefully neutral. "Space, freedom, the chance to be judged by one's own merits rather than one's family connections." Caleb studied her more closely. There was something beneath the composed surface, something she was not saying. He had learned to read people during the war, when knowing whether a stranger was friend or foe could mean the difference between life and death. This woman was running from something. Samuel glanced between them, clearly sensing an opportunity. "Speaking of opportunities, Clara is looking for work and lodging." He gave Caleb a meaningful look. "I was thinking perhaps you two might have something to discuss." The implication was clear enough. Caleb felt his defenses rise. "I doubt Miss Bennett would be interested in ranch work." "On the contrary." Clara's chin lifted slightly. "I came west specifically for new experiences. The customary paths for women in Boston held little appeal for me. Ranch work isn't like anything you'd have encountered back east." Caleb let skepticism color his tone. His hands, he noticed, were soft and uncalloused. Her complexion, though slightly sun-kissed, lacked the weathered quality of women who had spent their lives under the frontier sky. A small smile played at Clara's lips. "Perhaps not. But neither is raising a child alone something you had anticipated, Mr. Thornton." The words landed with precision. Caleb's jaw tightened. She glanced at the hair ribbons on the counter. "Blue is a lovely choice. It will complement your daughter's eyes." "Samuel's been talking, I see." "The whole town talks, Mr. Thornton. Small communities always do." "I understand you have a 4-year-old daughter and no wife to help care for her. We manage." "Of course you do. But managing isn't thriving, is it?" Clara straightened her shoulders. "I'd like to propose an arrangement. I need lodging and work. You need help with your daughter and household. I was a teacher before coming west, and I'm not afraid of hard work." Caleb almost laughed. A Boston school teacher on a cattle ranch. That would be quite a sight. No more unusual than a cowboy attempting to braid a little girl's hair, I imagine. For the first time in months, something like a genuine smile threatened to break through Caleb's defenses. "I appreciate the offer, Miss Bennett, but I'm not a charity case." "Good, because I'm not offering charity. Uncle Samuel tells me the widow who was helping you can no longer manage it regularly. And from what I've gathered, there are no other suitable options in town." Caleb glanced at Samuel, who suddenly became very interested in arranging goods on a shelf. Clara pressed on. "I'm proposing a fair exchange. Room and board plus a modest wage in return for help with your daughter and household management." She looked him directly in the eye. "Shall we at least discuss it?" Something about her directness, her lack of pity or judgment, made Caleb hesitate. Lily did need a woman's guidance. The ranch house had fallen into disarray without Rebecca's touch, and he was so tired, so very tired of trying to do everything alone. You should at least meet my daughter before we discuss anything further. Her smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. I would like that very much. They found Lily at the schoolhouse during the midday break. She was sitting alone beneath a large oak tree, her back against the trunk, her arms wrapped around her knees. The other children played nearby, but none of them approached her. She had become a ghost among them, set apart by grief. When she saw Caleb approaching with a strange woman, Lily's expression shifted from lonely to wary. She scrambled to her feet, clutching Rosie protectively. "Lily, sweetheart," Caleb knelt to her level. "This is Miss Clara. She might come help us at the ranch." Clara did not wait for a formal introduction. She knelt as well, heedless of her fine dress touching the dusty ground, putting herself at eye level with the child. "Hello there, Lily. I've heard so much about you from your papa. You must be very brave to help him run such a big ranch." Lily studied her with the unfiltered suspicion of childhood. "Are you going to be my new mama?" Caleb choked on his own breath, mortified. "Lily, that's not appropriate to ask." But Clara simply smiled, unruffled. "No, sweetheart, I'm just someone who would like to help you and your papa. I could cook meals, help keep the house tidy, and maybe even braid your hair if you would like." Lily's hand went self-consciously to her tangled locks. "Papa tries, but he's not very good at braids. Few fathers are." Clara's voice was gentle but matter-of-fact. "Would you like me to show you how I might braid it?" Lily hesitated, looking to Caleb for guidance. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Slowly, carefully, Clara reached out and turned Lily around. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, smoothing the tangled curls, working through knots without pulling. In moments, the wild mess had become a neat braid secured with one of the blue ribbons Caleb had purchased. "There." Clara produced a small hand mirror from her bag. "See how pretty Lily's face transformed." The wariness melted away, replaced by wonder and something that looked almost like hope. She stared at her reflection as though seeing herself for the first time. "Papa, look, I look like a lady." The simple joy in his daughter's expression pierced Caleb's heart. How long had it been since he had seen her smile like that? "You certainly do," he managed. "Can Miss Clara come home with us?" Lily turned to him with pleading eyes. "Please, Papa." Caleb looked from his daughter's hopeful face to Clara's patient one. Something told him this decision would change everything. Whether for better or worse, he could not say. "We'll give it a trial." His voice was gruff with emotion. 2 weeks, then we'll decide if the arrangement works for everyone." Clara nodded, understanding the caution behind his offer. "That seems perfectly reasonable, Mr. Thornton. If you're going to be living in our home, you'd better call me Caleb. And I'm Clara." She paused. "Or you may call me by whatever name suits you, as long as it's respectful." As they walked back to collect Clara's belongings from Samuel's store, Lily reached up and took Clara's hand. It was a small gesture, instinctive and trusting, and it made something shift in Caleb's chest. He thought of Rebecca, of the letter she had left for him, the letter he still had not been able to open. Would she approve of this? Would she see it as a betrayal, bringing another woman into their home so soon? Or would she understand that he was drowning, and Lily was drowning with him, and they needed someone to throw them a rope? The ride back to Stonebrook took them through rolling hills dotted with oak trees and grazing cattle. The late afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, and for a moment the world seemed almost peaceful. Clara sat in the wagon Caleb had borrowed for the occasion, her small trunk of belongings secured beside her. Lily rode with her, chattering happily about the ranch, the horses, the new foal in the barn, 100 small details that she had not shared with anyone in months. Caleb guided his horse alongside the wagon, listening to his daughter's voice with a mixture of relief and pain. This was the Lily he remembered, the bright, curious, talkative child she had been before grief had silenced her. If Clara could bring that child back even partially, the risk might be worth it. The ranch house came into view as they crested the final hill. It was a solid 2-story structure of wood and stone, built to withstand both weather and time. Caleb had added to it twice as his family and fortunes grew, expanding, the kitchen adding a second bedroom upstairs for the child they had hoped to have. In the golden evening light, one might not notice the sagging porch step, the weathered paint, the overgrown garden beds that Rebecca had once tended with such care. But as Clara surveyed her new home, Caleb saw it through her eyes, a place of both promise and neglect, a home crying out for attention. "It's lovely." Her voice was sincere without a trace of the politeness he had expected. The bones are good. It just needs some care. The unexpected understanding in her words loosened something in his chest. Yes, it does. Want to see my room? Lily tugged at Clara's hand. And the kitchen where Mama used to bake cookies, and the barn where the horses live? I would love to see everything, Clara said with a smile. But perhaps we should start with the house and save the barn for tomorrow. It's getting dark, and I imagine your papa needs to see to the animals. The practical suggestion, delivered without judgment, earned her a measure of respect from Caleb. Most Eastern ladies he had known would have been useless in understanding the rhythms of ranch life. Tommy can handle the evening chores. He dismounted and began helping Clara down from the wagon. Tonight we'll get you settled. Inside, the evidence of a man struggling alone was everywhere. The dishes stacked haphazardly, the laundry piled on chairs, the dust gathering in corners. But Rebecca's touches remained throughout. Curtains she had sewn, a quilt draped across the sofa, dried flowers she had arranged before her final illness. Clara took it all in without comment, her expression thoughtful rather than horrified. I apologize for the state of things, Caleb said stiffly. No need, her voice was gentle. Every home finds its own rhythm. We'll discover yours again. The word "we" hit Caleb like a physical sensation. It had been so long since there had been a "we" in this house. He showed her to the small guest room at the end of the upstairs hallway. It was plainly furnished with a narrow bed and a simple dresser and a window that looked out over the valley. Rebecca had decorated it in anticipation of visits from family that never materialized. It's perfect. Clara set her trunk at the foot of the bed. Thank you, Caleb. He nodded, suddenly uncertain what to say. The intimacy of having a woman in his home in the room just down the hall from his own felt strange and uncomfortable. He had not shared this space with anyone but Rebecca and Lily for years. I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is, he paused, beans and biscuits. Again, a small smile crossed Clara's face. Perhaps tomorrow I can take over the cooking. I'm told I make a passable pot roast. That would be... He cleared his throat, appreciated. He left her there and went to check on Lily, who had already changed into her nightgown and was sitting on her bed brushing her doll Rosie's yarn hair. Is Miss Clara going to stay forever? Lily asked without looking up. I don't know, sweetheart. We'll see how the 2 weeks go. I hope she stays. Lily finally met his eyes. She smells like flowers, like Mama's garden used to smell. The observation struck Caleb silent. He had not noticed the scent of lavender that clung to Clara, but now that Lily mentioned it, he realized it was true. The same flower that Rebecca had loved. Get some sleep, little one. He kissed her forehead. Tomorrow's a big day, Papa. Yes, I'm glad you brought Miss Clara home. So am I, sweetheart. The words surprised him with their truth. So am I. That night, after Lily was asleep and the house had grown quiet, Caleb sat alone on the front porch. His pipe was in his hand, unlit, more a habit than an intention. The stars spread across the sky in their millions, cold and distant and eternal. He heard the soft creak of the floorboards before he saw her. Clara appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl against the evening chill. May I join you? He gestured to the empty chair beside him, the chair that had been Rebecca's. Clara sat, pulling the shawl tighter around her shoulders. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that comes between two people who have nothing to prove to each other. Lily is remarkable, Clara finally said. You've done well with her, despite the difficulties. Caleb laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. You saw her today. Unkempt, emotional. I'm failing her at every turn. I saw a healthy, intelligent child who clearly adores her father. Yes, she needs some feminine guidance, but that doesn't diminish what you've provided. Her voice was firm with conviction. Something in her words eased a tension Caleb had not realized he was carrying. Her mother died of fever 6 months ago, he heard himself say. The confession surprised him. He had not spoken of Rebecca to anyone except Lily since the funeral. Some days I look at Lily and all I see is Rebecca, the shape of her eyes, the way she tilts her head when she's thinking. That must be both a comfort and a heartache. He nodded, struck by her understanding. Why did you really come, Wes? Miss Bennett, it couldn't have been just for opportunities, as you put it. Clara was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Her eyes fixed on the stars, and something in her expression shifted. The composed mask slipped just for a moment, revealing the vulnerability beneath. I was engaged, she finally said, to a man my parents considered suitable, Harvard educated, from a good family, wealthy, everything a woman could want, supposedly. But behind closed doors, he was a different person entirely. Controlling, possessive. And when I tried to assert myself, she paused, her hand unconsciously touching her wrist. He made it clear that I was his property, not his partner. When I finally found the courage to break the engagement, my family was mortified. They wanted me to overlook his behavior for the sake of the family connection. Not just once, but regularly, with multiple women. I'm sorry. When I broke the engagement, my family was mortified. They wanted me to overlook his indiscretions for the sake of the family connection. She turned to look at Caleb, and there was steel in her eyes. I refused. So you ran away to California. I prefer to think of it as running towards something rather than away. A life where I'm judged by my own merits, not by whom I marry or which family I'm born into. Caleb studied her profile in the starlight. There was strength there and determination that belied her refined appearance. Well, he said, finally, there's certainly no shortage of opportunities to prove your merit at Stonebrook Ranch. She laughed, a warm sound that seemed to chase away some of the evening's shadows. I look forward to it, Mr. Thornton. Caleb. She smiled, and somehow the sound of his name on her lips felt like the beginning of something new. The night deepened around them. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The wind whispered through the cottonwood trees. And on the porch of a house that had known too much sorrow, two wounded souls began to glimpse the possibility of healing. But they did not know that they were being watched. On the ridge overlooking Stonebrook Ranch, hidden in the shadows of a stand of oak trees, a man on horseback observed the scene below. He had been there for hours, patient as a predator, watching and waiting. The man's name was not important. What mattered was who he reported to. Nathaniel Crawford had paid well for information about Caleb Thornton, about his struggling ranch, about his debts and his vulnerabilities, and the lonely little girl who could be used as leverage if necessary. And now there was a new element. A woman from the East, pretty and obviously educated, taking up residence in the Thornton house. Crawford would want to know about this. The watcher turned his horse and melted into the darkness, leaving no trace of his presence. Behind him, unaware of the danger circling like vultures, Caleb and Clara continued their quiet conversation under the stars. In the guest room upstairs, Clara's trunk sat unopened. Inside, hidden beneath her carefully folded dresses, was a letter. The envelope was expensive paper, the handwriting elegant and precise. The letter was from Marcus Whitfield. Clara had not opened it. She had recognized the handwriting immediately when it arrived at her uncle's store that morning, forwarded from a series of addresses as she had fled across the country. Marcus had found her. She did not know how. She had been so careful. Changed trains multiple times, used a false name at hotels, told no one except Uncle Samuel her final destination. But Marcus had resources. Marcus had connections. Marcus had an obsession that bordered on madness. And now he knew she was in Millfield, California. Clara lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into sleep. The house creaked. The wind seethed on. Somewhere a horse nickered softly. She had come here hoping for safety, for a new beginning, for a chance to build a life on her own terms. But Marcus Whitfield was not the kind of man who accepted rejection. And the letter in her trunk, still unread, carried a promise she knew all too well. He was coming for her, whether she was ready or not. The first week at Stonebrook passed in a rhythm that felt almost natural. Clara rose before dawn each day, preparing breakfast while the household slept. She cleaned and organized and cooked, transforming the neglected ranch house into something that resembled a home again. Lily followed her everywhere, a small shadow eager to learn and help. They baked together. They gardened together. They read stories and practiced letters and held tea parties with Rebecca's rose-patterned china cup. Each night, Caleb returned from the fields exhausted but somehow lighter. The burden of sole responsibility had been lifted, if only partially, and the relief showed in the loosening of his shoulders, the occasional warmth in his eyes. On the 8th morning, trouble arrived at Stonebrook's gate. Nathaniel Crawford rode up to the house with 2 of his men flanking him. His silver hair gleamed in the morning sun, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the working clothes everyone else wore. "Mr. Thornton," Crawford's smile never reached his cold eyes. I heard you have a new addition to your household. That's none of your concern, Crawford. Caleb's voice was steel. Everything in this valley is my concern. Crawford's gaze found Clara on the porch. Miss Bennett, is it Samuel Barrett's niece from Philadelphia? He tipped his hat with false courtesy. Welcome to California. I do hope you find our little community to your liking. Clara said nothing, but she felt the threat beneath his pleasant words. I came to remind you about your mortgage payment, Thornton. Crawford continued. It's coming due soon. I would hate to see you lose this lovely property over a simple matter of finances. I'll have your money. I certainly hope so. Crawford turned his horse. By the way, I spoke with your wife before she passed. Lovely woman. Such a tragedy. His eyes glittered with malice. She seemed quite worried about something. I always wondered what was troubling her. He rode away, leaving a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. That night, Tommy found strange hoof prints near the barn. Someone had been watching the ranch after dark. 2 weeks later, fire consumed the barn in the dead of night. The fire came without warning. Clara woke to the smell of smoke and the screaming of horses. She ran to the window and saw the barn engulfed in flames, orange tongues licking at the black sky. Caleb was already outside, racing toward the inferno. The horses! She heard him shout, "Get the horses out!" Clara ran downstairs and out into the chaos. Tommy was there, working frantically to open the corral gate. Caleb had disappeared into the burning barn. Minutes passed. The flames grew higher, and Caleb did not emerge. Clara did not think. She grabbed a wet cloth from the water trough, covered her face, and ran into the fire. She found him near the back, pinned beneath a fallen beam, still trying to free Pepper, the little brown mare that Lily loved. His left shoulder, the one with the old war wound, was bleeding badly. Clara. His voice was hoarse with smoke. Get out. Not without you. She grabbed the beam and pulled with strength she did not know she possessed. It shifted. Caleb scrambled free, dragging Pepper's lead rope. They stumbled out together just as the roof collapsed behind them. In the aftermath, as they lay gasping on the ground, Clara realized something had changed. Caleb was looking at her as though seeing her for the first time. You came back, he whispered. You ran into a burning building to save me. Clara could not explain it herself, could not explain why, in that moment of terror, her only thought had been of him. All she knew was that somewhere in those flames she had stopped running from her past and started running toward her future. The days after the fire passed in a blur of exhaustion and rebuilding. Neighbors came from across the valley, bringing lumber and tools in willing hands. They raised the frame of a new barn in 3 days, working from dawn until dusk, united by the unspoken understanding that what had happened to Stonebrook could happen to any of them. Clara watched from the porch, Lily pressed close to her side as the community came together. Ruth Hoffman, the school teacher, who had once looked at Clara with such disapproval, arrived with a basket of food and an awkward apology. I judged you too quickly. The older woman's voice was stiff with the effort of humility. What you did in that fire, running back in to save the horses, that took courage. I was wrong about you. Clara accepted the apology with grace she did not entirely feel. The burns on her arms were still tender. Her lungs still ached with every deep breath. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the weight of what she now knew. Crawford had tried to kill them, had sent someone in the dead of night to set fire to their livelihood, their home, their lives. And he would try again. Men like Crawford did not stop until they got what they wanted. Tommy had found more than just a kerosene can in the days following the fire. He had tracked the footprints back toward Crawford's land, and near the boundary fence, he had discovered something else. A telegram dropped in haste ordering someone named Brennan to finish the job. Jake Brennan, a name known throughout the valley, a man with a reputation for arson and violence, a man who worked for whoever paid the highest price. Crawford had hired him. The evidence was circumstantial, but damning. Sheriff Cooper came to take statements, his weathered face grim as he examined the ruins. He was a fair man, Daniel Cooper, but he was also a practical one. Crawford owned half the town. Going against him required proof that could stand up in court, and proof was hard to come by when your opponent had money and influence. I'll do what I can. Cooper's words were careful. But you need to understand Thornton. Crawford has friends in high places. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. Caleb's voice was flat, his injured shoulder bound in a sling. Just find Brennan. Make him talk. Brennan disappeared 2 days ago. Headed for Mexico, according to some. Cooper shook his head. Without him, we've got nothing but suspicion. After the sheriff left, Clara found Caleb standing in the ruins of the old barn, staring at the ashes as if they might reveal some secret. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion and pain. We can't prove it was Crawford. Her voice was soft. Not without witnesses. I know. Caleb did not turn to look at her. But I also know he won't stop. The fire was just the beginning. What do you think he wants everything? Caleb finally met her eyes. The ranch, the water rights, the satisfaction of seeing me destroyed. He kicked at a charred beam. Crawford wanted Rebecca years ago. She chose me instead. He's never forgiven either of us. Clara thought of the conversation she had overheard between Crawford and Marcus at the edge of town. She had been walking back from her uncle's store when she caught their voices drifting from behind the saloon. They had not seen her, too absorbed in their plotting. Crawford had been speaking of patience, of waiting for the right moment, of letting Caleb Thornton dig his own grave. Marcus had been less subtle. He wanted Clara back, wanted her punished for her defiance. He spoke of her as property, as something stolen that needed to be recovered. The memory made Clara's skin crawl. There's something else you should know. She forced the words out. Marcus and Crawford are working together. I heard them talking in town. Caleb's expression darkened. I suspected as much. Crawford needs someone to do his dirty work, and your former fiancé seems eager to please. He's not my fiancé. The correction came automatically. He never truly was. I was a possession to him, not a partner. And what am I? The question caught her off guard. Clara looked at Caleb, really looked at him, and saw beneath the exhaustion and grief and anger to the man underneath. A man who had lost everything and was fighting to hold on to what remained. A man who had risked his life to save horses his daughter loved. A man who had stood between her and Marcus without a moment's hesitation. You're the first person who ever made me feel safe. The words came out before she could stop them. The first person who saw me as something more than what I could give. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out with his good hand and touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. Clara, his voice was rough with emotion, I need to tell you something. About the night of the fire. About what happened when I was trapped inside. She waited, barely breathing. When the beam came down and I thought I was going to die, I called out a name. Caleb's gray eyes held hers. I called for you, not Rebecca. You. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Clara felt something shift in her chest, a wall crumbling that she had not even known she was still maintaining. I don't know what this is between us, Caleb continued. I don't know if it's right or wrong or too soon. I only know that when I thought I might lose you, I felt something I haven't felt since Rebecca died. I felt afraid, truly afraid. Clara reached up and covered his hand with her own. The contact sent warmth spreading through her, pushing back the cold that had lived in her bones since Philadelphia. I feel it too, she whispered. Whatever this is, I feel it too. They stood like that for a long moment, two damaged people finding something unexpected in each other. The ruins of the barn surrounded them, evidence of destruction and loss, but also somehow evidence of survival. We should go inside, Clara's voice was soft. Lily will be wondering where we are. In a moment, Caleb's thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. I just need one more moment. He leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers, and Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of smoke and sweat, and something that was uniquely him. It was not a kiss. It was something more intimate than that. A promise, a declaration, a beginning. Whatever happens next, Caleb murmured against her skin, we face it together. Together, Clara agreed. And somewhere in the distance, watching from the ridge that overlooked the valley, a man on horseback observed their embrace and smiled. Marcus Whitfield had been patient. He had waited and watched and planned. The fire had been a distraction, a way to weaken Thornton and leave Clara vulnerable. Now it was time for the next phase. The letter arrived 3 days later. Clara was in the kitchen helping Lily with her letters when Tommy came running in with a handful of mail from town. Most of it was ordinary correspondence bills and notices and a letter from Samuel Barrett about supply orders. But one envelope was different. Thick cream paper, expensive and elegant. Clara's name written in a hand she knew too well. She waited until Lily was occupied with her slate before opening it. Her hands did not tremble. She had promised herself she would never tremble for Marcus Whitfield again. My dearest Clara, the letter began. I hope this finds you well, though I suspect the recent fire has caused some distress. How fortunate that no one was seriously injured. Fires can be so unpredictable on the frontier. I write to inform you of certain developments that may affect your situation. I have recently come into possession of documents relating to Mr. Thornton's financial obligations. It seems he owes a considerable sum to Mr. Crawford's bank, and the payment is coming due. I have offered to purchase this debt, thereby becoming Mr. Thornton's creditor. Should he fail to make the required payment, the ranch and all its assets will become mine by law, including, of course, any persons residing upon it. I give you a choice, Clara. Return to me willingly, and I will forgive Thornton's debt. Refuse, and I will take everything from him. His ranch, his livelihood, his ability to care for his daughter. The choice is yours. You have 1 week. Forever yours, Marcus. Clara read the letter twice, then a third time. The words blurred and sharpened, blurred and sharpened. Her chest felt tight, as if bands of iron were constricting around her ribs. He was going to destroy them, unless she surrendered, unless she gave herself back to the man who had beaten her, controlled her, made her believe she was worthless. Miss Clara Lily's voice broke through her thoughts. Are you sad? You look sad. Clara forced a smile. Just thinking, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. But even as she spoke the words, her mind was racing. Marcus had found a way to hurt them that did not require violence. He had found a way to win without lifting a finger. And she had no idea how to stop him. That evening, Clara showed Caleb the letter. She watched his face as he read, watched the color drain, and then return in angry red patches. His jaw tightened. His good hand clenched into a fist. When he finished, he looked up at her with eyes that burned. He thinks he can buy you. The words came out in a growl. Like your livestock. He thinks he can buy everything. Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. The question is whether he's right. About the debt. About all of it. Clara sat down heavily in the chair across from him. Caleb, if he owns your mortgage, he can foreclose at will. You'll lose the ranch. Lily will lose her home. Everything you've built will be gone, so you're considering it. His voice was flat, going back to him. No, the word came out sharp and immediate. I'm telling you what he's threatening because you deserve to know. But I will not go back to Marcus Whitfield. Not for this ranch, not for anything. Then we find another way. What way? Crawford owns the bank. Marcus has connections I can't even imagine. We have nothing but this land and our labor. We have each other. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. We have the truth, and we have people who believe in us. Do we? Clara's voice was bitter. Ruth Hoffman apologized, yes. A few neighbors helped with the barn. But when Crawford calls in his favors, when he starts applying pressure, how many of them will stand with us enough? Caleb's grip tightened, enough to matter. Clara wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that goodness could triumph over wealth and power and the ruthless determination of men like Crawford and Marcus. But she had seen too much of the world's cruelty to have faith in easy victories. There's something else. She forced herself to continue. Something I haven't told you. Caleb waited, his expression guarded. Marcus said he would take everything from you. Your ranch, your livelihood, your ability to care for your daughter. Clara swallowed hard. He emphasized that last part. I think he might try to use Lily against us. The change in Caleb was instantaneous. His expression went from guarded to murderous in the space of a heartbeat. If he touches my daughter, he dies. The words were not a threat. They were a simple statement of fact. I don't care about the law. I don't care about consequences. If he so much as looks at her wrong, I will end him. I know. Clara's voice was soft. That's why we need to be smart about this. We can't let him provoke us into something that will give him legal ammunition. Then what do you suggest? Clara had been thinking about this since she read the letter, turning it over in her mind, examining it from every angle. We need allies, real allies, not just sympathetic neighbors. We need people with power of their own people who have reason to oppose Crawford. And where do we find such people? Clara thought of her Uncle Samuel with his quiet network of connections throughout the valley. She thought of Sheriff Cooper, who was honest but cautious. She thought of the other ranchers who had suffered under Crawford's predatory lending. We start by gathering information. Clara's voice grew stronger as the plan took shape. Crawford has enemies. People he's cheated, people he's bullied, people who would love to see him fall. We find them, we unite them. We build a coalition strong enough to resist. And Clara's expression hardened. Marcus is a weapon, but Crawford is the hand that wields it. If we defeat Crawford, Marcus loses his power. Without the threat of foreclosure hanging over us, his leverage disappears. You sound like a general planning a campaign. I was engaged to a lawyer for 2 years. Clara's smile was grim. I learned more about strategy and manipulation than I ever wanted to know. Caleb studied her for a long moment. There was something new in his eyes, something that looked almost like admiration. You're not the woman I thought you were when you first arrived. Is that good or bad? Good. His voice was warm. Very good. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Names were written down, connections mapped out. By the time the lamp burned low and Lily was long asleep, they had the beginnings of a strategy. It was not much. It was barely anything at all against the resources Crawford commanded. But it was hope. And hope Clara had learned could be a powerful weapon in its own right. The coalition began to form over the following days. Samuel Barrett was the first to commit. Clara's uncle had his own history with Crawford, a business deal years ago that had left Samuel with bitter memories and a determination to see justice done. I've been waiting for someone to stand up to that man. Samuel's voice was fierce despite his mild appearance. Count me in for whatever you need. Sheriff Cooper was more cautious, but he agreed to investigate the fire more thoroughly and to document any evidence of Crawford's wrongdoing. I can't promise anything. Cooper's weathered face was serious, but if there's a legal way to bring him down, I'll find it. Other ranchers came forward one by one. The Petersons, who had lost their farm to Crawford's foreclosure 2 years earlier. The Whites, whose water rights had been stolen through questionable legal maneuvering. The Hendersons, whose son had been beaten by Crawford's men for speaking out against him. Each had a story, each had a grievance, and each was willing to risk Crawford's retaliation for the chance to see him brought low. But Crawford was not idle during this time. He began calling in favors, applying pressure to anyone who showed sympathy for Thornton. Suppliers suddenly found their orders delayed or canceled. Lines of credit were revoked. Rumors began to circulate about Clara's past, about her broken engagement, about the reasons she had really fled Philadelphia. Some of it was true. Most of it was twisted beyond recognition. I heard she ran away because she was carrying another man's child. The whispers followed Clara through town. I heard she tried to blackmail her fiancé, and he caught her in the act. Clara held her head high and refused to dignify the gossip with responses. But each whisper was a small wound, and the wounds accumulated. Lily was not spared either. The children at school began to repeat what they heard at home. Lily came back one afternoon with tears streaming down her face and a torn dress. They said, "My new mama is a bad woman." The child's voice was broken. They said she's going to make Papa lose the ranch. They said we'll have to live on the street like beggars. Clara gathered Lily into her arms, her heart breaking for this child who had already lost so much. None of that is true, sweetheart. People say cruel things when they're scared or confused, but your Papa loves you and I love you, and no one is going to make us leave our home. Promise, I promise. It was a promise Clara was not certain she could keep, but she would die trying. 1 week after Marcus's letter arrived, Clara made a decision. She found Caleb in the new barn brushing down his horse after a long day of riding the property lines. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold, and for a moment Clara simply watched him. The way his hands moved over the horse's flank, the set of his shoulders, the quiet competence that defined everything he did. He looked up and saw her watching. "Something on your mind?" Clara approached slowly, her heart pounding. She had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but now that the moment was here, the words seemed inadequate. "The week is up tomorrow." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Marcus will be expecting an answer." Caleb set down the brush. "And what answer are you going to give him?" Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. She had written it that afternoon, choosing each word with care. "I'm going to tell him no." She met Caleb's eyes. "I'm going to tell him that I would rather lose everything than go back to him. And I'm going to tell them why." Caleb took the envelope but did not open it. He simply held it, his gray eyes searching her face. "You're sure about this? Once you send it, there's no going back." I've never been more sure of anything. Clara stepped closer. I spent years letting Marcus control me, letting him decide my worth, my future, my very identity. I'm not that woman anymore. I'm not going to run, and I'm not going to surrender. Whatever happens next, I face it standing up, even if it means losing the ranch, even then. Clara's voice was firm. Caleb, I came to Stonebrook looking for safety. What I found was something more. A family, a purpose, a man worth fighting for. She paused. I'm not going to let Marcus take that from me. From us. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he set the envelope aside and reached for her, pulling her close with his good arm. I love you. The words were simple, direct, utterly sincere. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She had not expected this, had not dared to hope for it. I love you too. The admission came easier than she had imagined. I didn't plan to. I tried not to. But somewhere along the way, you became everything I never knew I needed. They stood together in the fading light, wrapped in each other's arms. The horse nickered softly behind them. Outside, the sounds of the ranch continued as they always did. Cattle lowing, chickens clucking, Tommy calling out to the other hands. Life going on despite everything. Marry me. Clara pulled back, startled. What Caleb's expression was serious, but tender. I know the timing is terrible. I know we're in the middle of a war, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to pretend that what we have is anything less than what it is. Caleb, I can't ask you to tie yourself to me, not with everything that's happening. You're not asking. I'm offering. He cupped her face in his hand. Clara Bennett, I have loved one woman in my life, and I lost her. I never thought I would love again. But you walked into my kitchen with your Eastern accent and your stubborn courage, and you brought my daughter back to life. You brought me back to life. Clara could not speak. Her throat was too tight with emotion. I'm not trying to replace Rebecca, Caleb continued, and I would never ask you to try, but I believe we can build something new together, something that honors the past while reaching for the future. The words echoed something she had thought herself in the quiet hours of the night. Yes, the word came out as a whisper. Yes, yes, stronger now. Yes, I will marry you. Tomorrow or next week or whenever you want. Yes. Caleb's smile was like sunrise after a long dark night. He pulled her close again, and this time when their lips met, there was no hesitation. The kiss was gentle and fierce all at once, a promise and a declaration, a beginning wrapped in the middle of an ending. Tomorrow, Caleb's voice was rough against her ear. I don't want to wait. Neither do I. They walked back to the house together, hand in hand, as the stars emerged overhead. Lily met them at the door, her small face anxious. Where were you? I was worried. Clara knelt and gathered the child into her arms. We were talking, sweetheart. About the future. What about the future? Clara looked up at Caleb, who nodded slightly. How would you feel about having a new mama? Clara asked. A real one who stays forever. Lily's eyes went wide. You mean it? You're going to be my mama for real. If you want me to be. I want it more than anything. Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck. Even more than a pony. Caleb laughed, the sound rich and genuine, and Clara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. In the midst of darkness, they had found light. In the middle of war, they had found peace. And whatever came next, they would face it as a family. But Marcus Whitfield's deadline had passed. And somewhere in the night, plans were being made that would test everything they had built. The storm was coming, and it would arrive sooner than any of them expected. The wedding was planned for the following Sunday. Reverend Holbrook agreed to perform the ceremony at Stonebrook Ranch, a small gathering of those who had proven themselves true friends in the weeks of conflict. But fate had other plans. 3 days before the wedding, Caleb received word that a group of his cattle had broken through the fence on the north boundary and scattered across the open range. It would take most of the day to round them up, possibly longer. I have to go. His voice was heavy with reluctance as he saddled his horse in the gray light of dawn. We can't afford to lose any more stock. I understand. Clara stood beside him, wrapped in a shawl against the morning chill. Lily and I will be fine. Keep the doors locked. Caleb's jaw was tight. Tommy will stay close to the house. If anything seems wrong, anything at all, you get Lily and ride for town. Nothing will happen. Clara reached up to touch his face. Go save your cattle. We'll be here when you get back. He kissed her, then a fierce, brief pressing of lips that carried all the words he did not have time to say. Then he was mounted and riding, disappearing into the mist that clung to the valley floor. Clara watched him go, a strange unease settling in her chest. She told herself it was nothing, just the anxiety of the past weeks catching up with her. Caleb would be back by nightfall, and in 3 days they would be married, and all of this would be behind them. She turned and went inside to start breakfast. The morning passed quietly. Clara helped Lily with her letters, then set her to practice while she worked on mending a pile of clothes that had accumulated. The domestic tasks were soothing, a reminder that normal life continued even in the midst of crisis. Tommy checked in, twice his young face earnest with the responsibility Caleb had given him. All quiet, Miss Clara. Haven't seen anyone on the roads. Thank you, Tommy. Let me know if anything changes. By early afternoon, Clara had begun to relax. The sun was warm through the windows. Lily was napping upstairs, and the ranch drowsed in the heat of the day. Perhaps she had been worried over nothing. Perhaps Marcus had accepted her rejection and moved on. She should have known better. The knock at the back door was soft, almost polite. Clara set down her mending and went to answer it, expecting Tommy with some question about the horses. Instead, Marcus Whitfield stood on her doorstep. Hello, Clara. His smile was charming, pleasant, the mask he wore for the world. I believe we need to talk. Clara tried to slam the door, but Marcus was faster. He caught it with one hand and pushed his way in, his pleasant expression never wavering. Now. His voice was silky smooth. Is that any way to greet an old friend? You need to leave. Clara backed away, her eyes darting toward the stairs where Lily slept. Tommy's right outside. One scream and he'll come running. The young man in the barn. Marcus closed the door behind him. He's currently occupied with a horse that seems to have developed a mysterious lameness. Strange how these things happen. Fear coiled in Clara's stomach. What do you want? I want what I've always wanted. Marcus advanced slowly, deliberately. You. Back where you belong. At my side, in my home, under my control. I will never go back to you. Never is a long time. Marcus's smile did not reach his eyes, and people change their minds when properly motivated. He moved faster than Clara expected. One moment he was across the room, the next his hand was wrapped around her wrist, squeezing the same place he had grabbed before. The old bruises screamed in protest. You embarrassed me, Clara. His voice was a hiss, all pretense of charm abandoned. You made me a laughingstock. Do you have any idea what that cost me? I don't care what it cost you. Clara fought to keep her voice steady. You are nothing to me. Less than nothing. The blow came without warning. The back of his hand connected with her cheek, snapping her head to the side. Stars exploded across her vision. You always did need to learn your place. Marcus grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Your cowboy isn't here to protect you now. It's just you and me, the way it should have been all along. Through the ringing in her ears, Clara heard something. Footsteps on the porch, the creak of the front door opening. Let her go. Caleb's voice was ice and death. He stood in the doorway, rifle raised, his gray eyes fixed on Marcus with murderous intent. How touching. Marcus did not release Clara. The hero arrives to save the day. I said, let her go. Caleb stepped closer. This is the last time I tell you. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of witnesses, Marcus laughed. The moment you pull that trigger, you become a murderer. You'll hang Thornton. And then who will take care of your precious daughter? The mention of Lily seemed to steady something in Caleb. His expression went cold and calm, the look of a man who had made a decision. I won't shoot you, Whitfield. I'll do something much worse. The rifle discharged into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. In the moment of shock and confusion, Caleb crossed the room and tore Clara from Marcus's grip, shoving her behind him. Then his fist connected with Marcus's jaw. The Eastern lawyer went down hard, his expensive clothes crumpling on the rough floor. Before he could rise, Caleb was on him, pinning him with one knee, while his good hand closed around Marcus's throat. You come to my home. Caleb's voice was barely human. You threaten my family. You put your hands on the woman I love. He squeezed. Marcus's face began to turn red. Caleb! Clara's voice cut through the rage. Caleb, stop. He's not worth hanging for. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then slowly, Caleb released his grip. He stood stepping back from the gasping man on the floor. Get up. Caleb's voice was flat. Get on your horse. Ride out of this valley and never come back. If I ever see your face again, I will kill you. Witnesses or no witnesses. Consequences or no consequences. Do you understand me? Marcus struggled to his feet, one hand at his bruised throat. His eyes were wild with fear and hate. Crawford will destroy you. His voice was a croak. He has your debt. He has the law on his side. You'll lose everything. Maybe. Caleb's expression did not change. But I won't lose my soul. Now get out. Marcus stumbled toward the door. He paused on the threshold, turning to look at Clara one last time. You chose wrong, he said. You'll see. Then he was gone, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Clara's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, trembling uncontrollably. Caleb was beside her in an instant, gathering her into his arms. I've got you. His voice was rough with emotion. You're safe. It's over. How did you know? Clara's words came out in gasps. You were supposed to be on the range. Tommy found me. The boy saw Marcus ride in and came running. Caleb pressed his lips to her hair. I've never ridden so fast in my life, Lily. Clara suddenly remembered. Lily is upstairs. She's fine. I checked on my way in. Still sleeping. He pulled back to look at her face, his expression darkening when he saw the red mark on her cheek. He hit you. It's nothing. It's not nothing. Caleb's jaw clenched. I should have killed him. No. Clara reached all up to touch his face. You did the right thing. Violence would only give him and Crawford more ammunition against us. They're going to come for us anyway. Caleb's voice was weary. Crawford has the debt. Marcus has the grudge. We're running out of options. Then we stop running. Clara's voice was stronger now. We stop defending and start attacking. Crawford has done terrible things to a lot of people. It's time those people spoke up. How Clara thought of the letter she had written to Marcus, the one she had never sent. She thought of all the evidence they had gathered, all the stories they had collected. She thought of Rebecca's letter still unopened in Caleb's desk. Tomorrow. Her voice was firm. Tomorrow we fight back. That night, Clara went to tuck Lily into bed. The child was already under the covers, Rosie clutched to her chest, but her eyes were wide open. Miss Clara Lily's voice was small in the darkness. Yes, sweetheart. I heard the bad man today. The one who hurt you. Lily's lower lip trembled. I was scared he would take you away. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing the golden curls from Lily's forehead. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise. Papa saved you. Lily said it with fierce pride. Papa is brave. He is, Clara smiled, the bravest man I know. Lily was quiet for a moment, her small fingers playing with Rosie's yarn hair. Then she looked up, her blue eyes serious. Miss Clara, can I ask you something? Of course. When you marry Papa... Lily hesitated. Can I call you Mama? Clara's heart stopped, then started again, beating so hard she thought it might break free. Only if you want to, she whispered. I would never ask you to forget your first mama. I won't forget her. Lily shook her head firmly. But my heart is big enough for two mamas. Mama in heaven and Mama here with me. Clara could not speak. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she gathered the child into her arms. I would be honored to be your Mama, Lily. Honored and blessed. Mama. Lily tested the word, then smiled. I like how that sounds. So do I, sweetheart. So do I. After Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, Clara found Caleb in his study. He was sitting at his desk, staring at a faded envelope with Rebecca's handwriting on the front. I've been carrying this for 6 months. His voice was barely above a whisper, too afraid to open it. Too afraid of what she might have written. Clara sat down across from him. What changed, almost losing you? Caleb looked up, his gray eyes haunted. When I saw Marcus with his hands on you, I realized something. I've been living in fear since Rebecca died. Fear of the pain, fear of moving forward, fear of losing anyone else I care about. And now, I understand that fear doesn't protect us. It just keeps us from living. He picked up the envelope. Rebecca wrote this before she died. Whatever it says, I need to know. Do you want me to leave, Num? Caleb reached for her hand. Stay. Please. Clara nodded, squeezing his fingers in silent support. Caleb broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. Clara watched his face as he read, saw the emotions flicker across his features. Pain, surprise, something that looked almost like relief. When he finished, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What does it say?" Clara asked softly. Caleb cleared his throat and began to read aloud. "My dearest Caleb, if you are reading this, I have left you sooner than either of us expected. I am sorry for that. Sorry for all the time we will not have. Sorry for all the moments I will miss with you and Lily. But I am not sorry for the life we built together. Not sorry for a single day of our marriage. You gave me everything, Caleb. Love, a home, a daughter who is the joy of my heart. There are things I need to tell you. Things I should have said while I had the chance. Nathaniel Crawford came to see me a week before I became ill. He threatened me, Caleb. Said that if I did not convince you to sell the ranch, he would destroy us. He spoke of debts and foreclosure and things I did not understand, but I understood the hatred in his eyes. I did not tell you because I did not want to worry you, because I thought I could handle it myself. I was wrong. Whatever happens, you must know that Crawford is dangerous, more dangerous than you realize. But that is not the most important thing I need to say. Caleb, I know you. I know how deeply you love. And I know that when I am gone, you will try to close your heart forever. You will tell yourself that loving once was enough, that you had your chance and you cannot ask for another. My darling, please do not do this. Love is not a finite resource. The heart does not run dry. Loving someone new does not diminish what we had. It honors it. It proves that the capacity for love I saw in you was real. When the time is right, when someone worthy comes along, open your heart again. For Lily's sake, for your own sake, for mine. I want you to be happy, Caleb. I want Lily to have a mother who loves her. I want you to find someone who makes you laugh again, who reminds you that life is worth living. This is not goodbye. This is permission. This is blessing. This is my final gift to you. I love you. I will always love you. But love is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be shared. Be happy, my darling. That is all I ask. Forever yours, Rebecca P.S. Be careful of Crawford. I have learned things about him. About a woman named Elizabeth Monroe who died under suspicious circumstances 10 years ago. The truth is out there, Caleb. Find it and make him pay. Caleb set down the letter. His face was wet with tears. She knew. His voice was broken. She knew about Crawford. She was trying to protect us. And she wanted you to love again. Clara reached over and took his hand. She gave you permission, Caleb. Permission to be happy. He looked at her, then really looked, and Clara saw the walls crumbling behind his eyes. The grief was still there, would probably always be there. But it was no longer a prison. It was a memorial, a tribute to a love that had been real and true and transformative. I do love you. Caleb's voice was steady despite the tears. Not because Rebecca told me to, because you are worthy of love, because you brought light back into this house, because when I look at you, I see a future I want to live. Clara felt her own tears falling. I love you too, all of you, even the parts that still belong to her. They held each other in the lamplight, two wounded souls finding healing in each other's arms. The letter lay on the desk between them, a bridge between past and present, between grief and hope. And in Clara's mind, a plan was forming. Rebecca had left them more than permission. She had left them a weapon. Elizabeth Monroe. A name, a mystery, a thread that if pulled might unravel Nathaniel Crawford entirely. Tomorrow they would begin pulling. The town meeting was called for the following Saturday, the day before Caleb and Clara's rescheduled wedding. The entire valley was invited, and the small church that served as Millfield's community hall was packed to the rafters. Crawford arrived with his usual entourage of hired men and sycophants. He took his seat in the front row, his expression smug, clearly expecting this meeting to be another opportunity to demonstrate his power. He had no idea what was coming. Sheriff Cooper called the meeting to order. His weathered face was grim but determined. Clara had spent days convincing him to take a stand, presenting evidence, appealing to his sense of justice. In the end, it was Rebecca's letter that had tipped the scales. Elizabeth Monroe. Cooper had known her, had been sweet on her years ago before Crawford came to the valley. Her death had haunted him ever since. We're here today to address serious accusations. Cooper's voice carried through the crowded room. Accusations of arson, intimidation, and possibly worse. Crawford rose immediately. This is outrageous. I demand to know who is making these accusations. I am. Caleb stepped forward from the back of the room. along with a dozen other citizens of this valley who have suffered under your predatory practices. The murmuring began immediately. Clara watched faces in the crowd, saw surprise and skepticism, and in some cases, hope. One by one, the witnesses came forward. The Petersons who had lost their farm, the Whites whose water rights had been stolen, the Hendersons whose sons still bore the scars of Crawford's brutality, and then, unexpectedly, Marcus Whitfield. Clara had not known he would be there, had not known that Sheriff Cooper had found him in a boarding house in Sacramento, drunk and bitter and ready to talk. Marcus stood before the crowd, his face pale but his voice steady. Crawford approached me when I first arrived in Millfield. He offered to help me retrieve my former fiancée in exchange for certain services. He paused. He asked me to help destroy Caleb Thornton, to drive him from his land by any means necessary. The crowd erupted. Crawford's face went purple with rage. This is slander lies from a rejected suitor seeking revenge. I have documents. Marcus held up a sheaf of papers, telegrams, receipts, a letter in Crawford's own hand ordering the burning of Thornton's barn. The room fell silent. Sheriff Cooper stepped forward and took the documents. He studied them for a long moment, his expression growing darker with each page. There's more. Clara's voice rang out clear and strong. Nathaniel Crawford has done this before. 10 years ago, a woman named Elizabeth Monroe died under suspicious circumstances. She had rejected his advances. She had threatened to expose his business practices. Cooper looked up from the documents. I've been in contact with Elizabeth's family in Nevada. They provided letters she wrote before her death, letters describing threats Crawford made against her. This is a conspiracy. Crawford was on his feet, his composure finally cracking. These people are trying to steal everything I've built. Caleb's voice was calm. We're trying to expose what you really are, a bully, a thief, and possibly a murderer. The vote was called an hour later. The citizens of Millfield voted to suspend Crawford's banking license pending investigation. They voted to void all debts held by his institution until the accounts could be independently audited. They voted to ask the territorial governor to send a marshal to conduct a formal inquiry. Crawford was led from the meeting hall in handcuffs, charged with arson, conspiracy, and suspicion of murder. As he passed Clara, he leaned close and hissed, "This isn't over." Clara did not flinch. "For you, Mr. Crawford, it most certainly is." Marcus left town that night. Clara watched him go from the porch of Stonebrook Ranch, feeling nothing but a distant relief. He stopped at the gate, turning to look back at her one last time. "I'm sorry," his voice carried across the quiet evening air, "for what I did to you, for what I became." Clara did not respond. Some wounds were too deep for easy forgiveness. But she nodded once, acknowledging his words if not accepting them. Marcus rode away into the gathering darkness. Clara never saw him again. Caleb found her on the porch an hour later, still staring at the empty road. "He's gone. Gone." Clara turned to face him. "Crawford, too. It's over, Caleb. It's really over." He pulled her into his arms and she let herself finally truly relax. The weight she had been carrying for months, for years, lifted from her shoulders. "Tomorrow," Caleb's voice was warm against her hair. "Tomorrow we get married." "Tomorrow," Clara agreed. "And the day after that, and the day after that, for the rest of our lives." They stood together as the stars emerged, two people who had found each other against impossible odds. The ranch spread out around them, peaceful and quiet. In the house behind them, Lily slept secure in the knowledge that she was loved. It was not a perfect ending. The investigation into Crawford would take months. The scars they carried would never fully heal. The memory of all they had lost would always be with them. But it was a beginning, a real beginning, and that was more than either of them had dared to hope for. The wedding took place on a spring morning, with apple blossoms scenting the air and meadowlarks singing in the fields. The ceremony was held at Stonebrook Ranch under a canopy of flowers that the women of Millfield had constructed overnight. Clara wore a simple ivory dress she had sewn herself. At her throat was a brooch that had belonged to Rebecca, Caleb's gift to her the night before. It was hers. Caleb had pressed it into her hands. "She would want you to have it." Clara had cried then, understanding what the gesture meant. She was not replacing Rebecca. She was joining a family that Rebecca had built, carrying forward a legacy of love. Lily served as flower girl, scattering rose petals down the makeshift aisle with more enthusiasm than precision. Her golden curls were neatly braided, her dress spotless. For once, her smile wide enough to light the valley. Samuel Barrett walked Clara to the altar, his weathered face beaming with pride. "You deserve this," he whispered as they approached. "You deserve to be happy." Reverend Holbrook spoke the traditional words, but Clara barely heard them. Her attention was fixed on Caleb, on the love shining in his gray eyes, on the future they were building together. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Holbrook's voice rang out over the assembled guests. "You may kiss your bride." The kiss was tender and fierce and full of promise. The crowd cheered. Oh. Lily threw herself at them, demanding to be included in the embrace. "Are you my mama now?" Her voice was breathless with excitement. My real mama, Clara knelt to meet her eyes. "I'm your mama forever, sweetheart. Nothing will ever change that. Even when I'm old, even then." Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck. "I love you, mama." The words spoken so simply broke something loose in Clara's chest. All the pain of the past months, all the fear and uncertainty dissolved in that single moment. "I love you too, Lily, with all my heart." The celebration lasted well into the evening. There was food and music and dancing, and for one perfect night, the troubles of the past seemed very far away. As the sun set and the guests began to drift homeward, Clara found herself standing alone at the edge of the property, looking out over the land that was now her home. Caleb joined her, sliding his arm around her waist. "Happy." His voice was soft. "More than I ever thought possible." Clara leaned into him. "Is this real? Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover it was all a dream." "It's real." Caleb pressed a kiss to her temple. "We earned this, Clara. Both of us." They stood together in the gathering dusk, watching the stars emerge one by one. Somewhere behind them, Lily was laughing at something Tommy said. The sounds of home, of family, of belonging. "What happens now?" Clara asked. "Now we live." Caleb's voice was certain. "We raise our daughter. We work the land. We build something that lasts." And Crawford. "The investigation will run its course." Caleb shrugged. "Whatever happens to him, it's out of our hands now. All we can do is focus on what's in front of us." Clara nodded, understanding. The past was past, the future was unwritten. In the present, this moment was all they truly had. "I have something for you." Caleb reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. "I found it in Rebecca's things after. I've been holding on to it, waiting for the right moment." He opened his hand to reveal a simple silver locket on a delicate chain. It was her mother's. Caleb's voice was thick with emotion. "She wore it on our wedding day. I want you to have it." Clara took the locket with trembling hands. Inside were two tiny portraits, a woman with kind eyes and a man with a serious face. Rebecca's parents, she realized. The grandparents Lily would never know. "I'll treasure it." Clara fastened the chain around her neck, feeling the weight of history settle against her heart. "Thank you, Caleb, for everything." He kissed her, then slow and deep, a promise renewed. The girl who was called worthless had found her worth. The man who thought his heart was closed forever had opened it again. And together they had built something beautiful from the ruins of the past. 2 years later, on a spring morning, much like the one that had seen their wedding, Clara stood on the porch of Stonebrook Ranch with a baby in her arms. James Benjamin Thornton was 3 months old, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. He slept peacefully, unaware of the world around him, secure in the knowledge that he was loved. Lily, now 6 years old, sat beside her mother, practicing her letters on a small slate. "Mama, look," she held up her work proudly. "I wrote my whole name, Lily Rebecca Thornton." Clara smiled at the middle name, the one Lily had chosen herself. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Your mama would be so proud." "Both my mamas?" Lily asked. "Both your mamas." Caleb emerged from the barn, dusty and tired, but smiling. The ranch had prospered in the 2 years since Crawford's arrest. New fences, new stock, new hands to help with the work. They were not rich, but they were comfortable. And more importantly, they were happy. "How are my girls?" Caleb dropped a kiss on Clara's forehead, then on Lily's. "And my boy sleeping, as usual." Clara shifted James in her arms. "I think he has your gift for napping." "A useful skill." Caleb settled into the chair beside her. "I heard from Sheriff Cooper today. Crawford's trial starts next month. They're charging him with Elizabeth Monroe's murder." Clara nodded. The investigation had been thorough, turning up evidence that Crawford had indeed been responsible for Elizabeth's death. Justice delayed for a decade was finally coming. And Marcus gone. Caleb's voice was neutral. Rumor has it he went back east, started over somewhere far from here. Clara felt nothing at the news. Marcus Whitfield was a chapter of her life that had closed completely. She wished him no ill, but she wished him nothing at all. Mama Lily's voice interrupted her thoughts. Can I hold Jimmy? Clara transferred the sleeping baby to his sister's careful arms. Lily cradled him like the precious cargo he was, her face soft with love. He's going to be so lucky. Lily's voice was serious. Having me for a sister. Clara laughed. Yes, he is. And having you for a daughter makes me the luckiest mother in California. In the whole world, Lily corrected. In the whole world. The sun climbed higher, warming the porch, the family, the land they had fought so hard to keep. Stonebrook Ranch spread out before them, peaceful and prosperous, a testament to everything they had overcome. Clara leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder and closed her eyes. Happy. His voice was soft, an echo of the question he had asked on their wedding night. Beyond measure. Clara's answer was the same, but truer now, deeper. You gave me everything, Caleb. A home, a family, a future. You gave yourself. Caleb kissed her hair. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. They sat together in the morning light, watching their children and feeling the warmth of the sun and each other. The past was behind them, a road traveled, a lesson learned. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of promise. Clara had come to Stonebrook looking for safety. She had found something far more valuable. She had found home. And home, she had learned, was not a place. It was the people who loved you, the family you chose, the life you built together day by day, moment by moment, through hardship and joy alike. She had not been saved. She had been chosen. And she had chosen back. That was the truest love of all. The end.